this is heavy. Yes. It's going to go here. Oh. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is variations on an alphabet. Tions on
I need to turn on some light.
No, I'm recording my iPad, so I'm doing it this way. So variations on an alphabet. So my plan is to make a group of A's and then a group of B's, etc., etc. Now, I'll probably try to do maybe 3 per page or more. So an A is fun because you can make it like a big little A, and you can, I wonder, should I use black ink instead of this? Black ink. Yeah, black ink works better. I can make an A. Now this is essentially a small a, but bigger. Now that looks too much like a G. So anyway, A. Another A is starting backwards, starting at what you normally would think would be the last part of the A you'd make. If you're making an A like this, this is the last part you'd make. But I'm starting with this line. So I go up, down, and over. And I'm making, I'm imitating the thick strokes where they would be if I was using a fountain pen. So up, down, and over. You don't have to add that extra loop. You can also make an A using 2 strokes. There's always like this little tiny bit here that seems a little constricted. So sometimes you can make it with 3 strokes like this. So it's really, it's, okay, why, how else can I make an A? I can go up, down, and then I can cross it this way, except this would get in the way of the other letters. So that's not as good. And you can also throw this sort of, you know, make it look like a capital T, but it turns into an A like this. You have this thing filling up the space that's up here. The A is one of these letters that has a lot of space above on either side. So you can fill up that space with something, with other things. So A's are unique in that way. Other letters that are like that are a J and an L, where they're very bottom heavy. So when we get to those, we'll have yet another issue. So that's the A's. Let's go to a B now. Now a B can be made with 1 or 2 strokes normally, but the B has a vertical line plus 2 bowls, and how these, it could go like that, it could go like this. There's different, they could be even. When you make your loop, you could make the loop be tiny, you can make the loop non-existent, you can make the cootie bug loop like Melissa does, where the loop is really big. But then if it gets too big, then it gets confusing. It doesn't look as much like a bee. So let me start over here with options of bees. So a bee, here's the bee that I sort of remember. No, the one that I learned looked like this, which is just fugly. But it's interesting. It has, 2 curves, 3 curves, 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4 points, which this has 1 curve, 1 point, and everything else is curved. And you can also make it with 2 strokes. This becomes a little confusing, so I would say that isn't good. My friend Rob Morrison makes a bee like this. He makes the bottom loop first. And again, depending on your taste, you can make the bottom loop small. You can make the bottom loop bigger. This distance can change. But again, if I'm designing an alphabet that I need to follow myself, I think of the other letters that are like a B. And one could be a P, one can be an R. One can kind of be a D as well. These are all letters that are related because they have a bowl, a vertical line and a bowl. So if I made my B like this in my thing, I would also make my R look like that, where the R would look like that. If I made my B look like this, my R might look like that. Again, following the rules, if I gave myself rules. So giving yourself rules is important, I think, if you're trying to make 26 letters relate to one another. Another way to make a B is to do this, where it's just one, or make it just one curly right turn. You're turning right. You're continuing to turn right. You don't stop. You don't change gears. You don't do anything. It's all one big right turn. And I find these things the least attractive to draw because I have a hard time doing that. But it is a way to do it. Another thing that I find sort of fun is, again, let's say this is your B that you're making using a flexible nibbed fountain pen. You can choose to make every downstroke thick, so it would look like this. or you could choose just to make one of them thick, where it could be this. Oops. God damn it. I'm zoomed in so much that that could be the thick one. Or you could make, God damn it, that one thick. Or you could make the last one thick, which, as you can see, I can't make on this freaking iPad. But again, if you follow the rules that if you're deciding that the stroke that's going to be thick is going to be the last. Oh, hi, Bob. This is for you. I'll do this on paper for a 1/2 mil. If you decide that you want the last stroke, the last downstroke, to be the only one that's thick, follow that. See if it works with the other letters you're making. So if I was making an A, that would be the thick one. If I was making, see, this is where it gets weird. If I was making a T, depends on how I make a T. If I make a T like this, like that, but I could also make a T where I start there and then I end there. So you sort of have to decide what your last stroke is. Or maybe it's the thick line is going to be the furthest thing to the right. But again, the general idea is, if you're sort of developing your own lettering, and you may only do this on your signature, so you have 3 letters only to deal with, not unless you're really fancy. You have lots of last names, hyphenated last names, or 2 middle names, or whatever. SBRE Brown, SBRE Brown, SBREB 5 for important people. Then you've got that. Okay, let's go to C here. Now the C is, again, a simple letter which can, a C and an E and an O, they're all made up of a single sort of curve that's sometimes doubled up or tripled up. And how do you make this interesting? Now, you can do down like that. You can make it an extra tail. You can make it, let's pretend I did that better. You can add extra curlicues here. The thing with C's and O's and E's, they always just, you add more curlicues to it, it ends up looking like a pubic hair that had a perm. You know, it's just too many curls. You know, pubic hair run amok. Okay, my mind is now in the gutter. We have to crawl out of it for a moment. So I've always found a simple curve that just repeats itself to be less interesting to me. And I found in an old ledger book someone had made a C, and I copied it, and it's just beautiful because it included a curve that was not normally used in a C, and it starts down here and it goes up and went like that. So the C had this S-shape curve, this complex curve as part of it. And I can't remember now whether, no, it didn't look like that. I guess it was thick just there. And that was really a fun way of making a C. And I also make a C where I take this line and I move it up. So it, oh, that's an E. I made an E. I'm thinking an E. God damn it. Well, I'm not hitting the down. It looks kind of like this, except better. Sorry about that. But again, this lead in to the C was what it kind of needed. The C by itself, again, if you think of the balance of a C, it's kind of nice to have something. If here's our, this trapezoid is where we put the letter, the C sort of fits nicely in that, but it's nice if you could figure out a way to use up this space a little bit. So that's why they have that. That's why having a C that looks like this is kind of nice. I also did one C where it was, I pulled it in like this, did that, sort of did this, where I sort of added the serif that you see in a printed version. I sort of decided to draw that there. But if I have to follow this rule, where else am I going to have to add that? On an E? Or is that getting too complicated? So again, when I make letters, if I bother to think about it, if I make letters, I need to think about how they're going to relate to the other letters that are similar. Okay, let's do a D. Oops. D. Now a D, it's going to be like a B, except with only one bowl rather than two. So again, I can make a D look like, no, that doesn't look like a D, does it? So the B that looks like that works, but a D that does not work. So that bad D, bad D. So can I make the B that look like this? Can I make a D that looks like that? It's not working out very well, is it? So here's how I make Ds. I make a D like that, or I make a D. How did I learn to make a D? Kind of like that. I think this is how I learned how to make a D. Just nasty. The Palmer method was just, this thing is just very unattractive to me, that little dangly bit. But D's, I think D's need to be made in one stroke only. And if I make a D like this, D's are fun because of, you can have this thing fly all over the place. And you can make this part of the D be really wide. So you can sort of play with that. You can have this thing be tall. You can have it be short. You can down, over. It's fun to play with this distance and this distance. And you can have this be a loop, or a small loop, or even no loop. It's hard to do no loop when you're drawing. And like the other letters we were doing, you can write them out and post them on Facebook or on Instagram. or make a video like this, or we can do it side by side at some point. But you need to point down. You have to, and I need to show how to make one of those tripods for people out of hangers. Now again, if a D looks like this, if this is your standard D and you wanted to shade only one of these things, you can shade this one and that one. Oh, I'm shading both of them, aren't I? You can shade only the last one. Sometimes when I see this one shaded, I know that it's fake because this is almost always an upstroke. So this should never be shaded, but I often have to design monograms that are, that look like that. Oops. Oh, and then, so every vertical stroke is shaded, which is fine for a typeface or for a monogram, but it doesn't look, you can't really make that using a fountain pen. You could make this using a italic nib. That would happen automatically. Do I have an italic nib here? Okay, what was I using here? I was using that one. So again, if you're using a stub nib pen, all of these things are going to look different because every vertical line will be fat. Okay, E's. E's, again, have this pubic hair run amok. This left turn, you're turning counterclockwise throughout the whole letter, and you could make it fancier by, adding that. And it looks like a watch spring and a pubic hair had a child. And we don't like that. It's an abomination. So how can I make this interesting for me? I can pull this in on the side like that. I could, like that C that comes from the bottom, you can pull this up. That may end up looking too much like this ampersand, the ampersands that look like that, which you may not want. And again, you can play with the length of this bowl versus this bowl. You can have this be a point, or you can have it be a loop. You can this kind of E, it's just big loop, little loop. This might work for some people, but chances are it's going to look more like this, where the bottom loop is the bigger one. But you can play around with that. You can have fun. So play with the lead-in stroke on some of these. Okay, let's go to the F. Fs are interesting because they're kind of like an E, and they're kind of like a T. They're not at all like an E. Never mind. They're not like an E at all. They're like a J and a T, sort of. You can do this, and then do this, and then do that and that. So 1, 2, 3, 4 strokes. You can make it all one stroke, that same shape, in one fell stroke. Which I tend to like. I tend to like to do that. But you can also have fun with the length of the F. You can't really pull this too far this way in one stroke, but you can pull this further back if you wanted. I like to sometimes make, angular letters. That could be an F. You take a J and an F and a J are almost identical. Here's a J, here's an F. By adding that little serif on that. So sometimes it's interesting taking a cursive letter and drawing it without any curves. How do you turn it into something made just with straight lines, or almost straight lines? And an F seems to be calling for that. So again, an F. There's, what am I doing? Am I making any sense? There's an F. G's are fun. You've got the big G, little O, General Foods G, which looks like that, kind of. But you've got this could be a loop, this could be a point, and the loop can be big. It may end up looking like a Y, so you have to watch out for that. My mother would make her G's look like that. That's how she made her G. Your hand is just stupid. Well, as you can see, I've come up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 G's, and none of them are necessarily relate with anything I've done before. Another thing I can do with this G is I could borrow what I did with the C. I can come in from this side, like I did with my C. This is the kind of G where this is all below the bottom line. G's also can look, the G that I learned in school looked like that, which is ugly. And the other letters that had this shape, the J, the I, the S, and the B, all had this little rocking chair bottom to them, which was dumb. Is that like a rocking chair or an ice skate? Just dumb. The I, the B, the S. It's just very unattractive, I think. But it is an option. How else can we make a G here? Can you make a G like this? Like I was making my other C with this tail going up, maybe. How do I make an angular G? That doesn't work. You look at it and you think, could someone confuse this with a Y? or some other letter. And if it looks like it's confusable, chances are it will be confused. Like this is a bad one right here, because it looks too much like an I to me. Anyway, there's ways to play around with shading to make this line seem more important by applying pressure there. That does not work. It's calling attention to itself too much down there. Bad one. G. Okay, H. Now H is interesting because you have 1, 2, 3. I'm trying to remember how were we supposed to make an H when I learned how to make an H. I think it was with 3 strokes again. I don't remember it being less than that. But how do you make an H in 1 stroke? Well, I like making an H like this. So it's like a J and a C next to each other. Yeah, it's going to take you a long time to learn a new handwriting. My natural handwriting is just fucked, so I never learned how to do it correctly. But anyway, here's our H. Now you can also do an H using 3 strokes. You can make an H. Now see that looks like an N or something. You really do need this line to be more horizontal, I think. So you either have to can I make it like that? I guess I could do that. When you make it with a loop like this, this ends up looking too much like an X, like it could be an X. So I would not recommend that. Okay, the I. Hardest or most boring or whatever letter. Okay, so again, you have that. You can do that. The potato that wants to be a pretzel or something. I don't know, this weird shape. That looks like a J. Doesn't work. It's sort of, that can look so much like a Q though. You have to be careful again about what you're doing. My advice, instead of using the letter I, you just use your name in the third person. Pierre thinks he should get another cup of coffee rather than I think I need another cup of coffee. Just use your, it's an awful letter. Awful. J's, on the other hand, are a lot of fun because you can, essentially you have that you can tart up. So you can, make this bigger. You can, when you start tarting it up, then you have to, do something up here too. So you do something like that. And you can have, that go like that. You can have it be angular, making sure it doesn't look like an F though. You can do that. But again, you have to have this be pretty straight, otherwise it might end up looking like a Y. So you don't want that. You can add a loop there. So a simple letter like a J, which is a straight line with a loop. I think you do have to do something on the top. See, now this might look too much like a T if you do that, because that is how you can make a T. So just have to be careful on how wide you or how long you make the various elements of the J. K's are awful. They're essentially a J with a this on it, and you can make this be, but there always seems to be a bottom heavy. Like this needs to be thicker. So what I do is make an S shape, not a curve or a straight line, but I make an S shape. That S shape allows me to press down and get some weight moved up here to that bit. And I usually also, when I do this, I have to move where it joins the K, where it hits the K, it moves down to here, just to give room for this. The nice thing about Ks are the last stroke you make, this can go all over the fucking place. You know, it does not have to stay put. So, again, you can start off the K like that. You can I don't think you can do this, I guess. But I think this is less successful. I was trying to come up with another way to make the top of the K. You know, can you add something like that up there to give it some weight? I mean, some people make a K that looks like this. And I just think this loopy, this limp thing up here is just sad. I don't like things that are limp. In the gutter. Hijkl. L's are fucked. And the reason why L's are fucked, you want to know why they're fucked? Is this is so goddamn long. So you're making a word. Love is, you know, how far away can I make this? So you have to then pull this down to make it work. And so to do that, and also this stroke here, this horizontal stroke, it's harder to be thick because it normally isn't as thick as that. So you sort of have to pay more attention and do that. So an L, again, you have this line here, the diagonal, or which pretends to be the vertical. If you do something like this, it may look too much like a Z. So my advice would be to have this be a loop leading up to this down, and then you can do that without a loop here, but I generally like a loop, down, loop, and pull this over. Now if you want not to have this be underneath the baseline, then you have to do something like that, where you pull it up pretty quick. But then this ends up looking like the German script B or something. I guess that has a little thing like that on it to look like a B, but if I make my L vertically, I don't have that problem as much. But again, the height and width of this part of the letter, where this crosses, this is where you can sort of play with stuff. This better cross pretty close toward the bottom, though. Otherwise, you're going to end up making it clumsy, I think, where I don't think that's going to work. How am I going? I'm not even halfway there. M. Okay, M, writing an M is in many ways easier than printing an M. When you're trying to make a monogram with an M or an N or a W, all of these very sharp enclosed spaces end up making things really dark, and it's hard to overlap letters. But with a cursive M, you can make some of these rounded. So now that's a nasty, if there's ever a nasty M, that's it. So let's try to make it more interesting. Now the one I learned in school looked kind of like this, except it was uglier than that. She had this little tiny brontosaurus head, just awful. You know, this little tiny loop. But so that loop can be an angle, point here, point here, point here, loop here. So you can play around with which is a loop and which is a point. Except if you make your M look like that, it's going to look like a W. You have to think ahead. And you want it to be a loop down here and a point and a curve. So there's, you know, you've got, these are the elements. You can have a loop, a point, or a curve. You know, and another curve. And put these together. You know, add to shopping cart, build your own. And it's, so how do you make it interesting? Well, you can make it interesting by making the shapes of these things descend like that. You can also start at the bottom like that. Usually, though, many people who do M's like that also have they have this little thing over at the top like you do with an A. And again, if you make your A's have that loop, the M is essentially an A with an extra hump. So you might want to think about having them consistent. Or not. Doesn't make any difference to me. I'm not reading your shopping list. Honey, I'm home. I got the 10-pound fatted calf. That's not what I wanted. I wanted 10 ounces of butter or something, you know, because I misread your hieroglyphics. Okay, an N. So an N is like an M. You can make it the same as you made your N, your M, except with one less hump. You can make an N angular number. I like making that work that way. you can make an N like that. Like we made the earlier M that starts with an A and has that business going on. You can start at the bottom, make this diagonal, shaded, but everything else faint, light. I usually make my ends something like this. And I can have a lot of fun with that bottom part of the end running amok. And I do that with an M too. Mr. and Mrs. I've got this thing going all over the place. Okay. O is pretty boring. And I think I learned how to make an O like that in school. Did I? I forget. Or was it like this? See, you can't, it's going to look like something else. So, O's are really difficult. I don't like them. Sam I am. How do I make an O? I think I just make them like that. They look like a big fat 6. But again, you can decide to shade every downstroke, or you could shade the first downstroke only. Can you shade the second downstroke? You could, maybe. But if you try to tart these up too much, you're going to end up making it look like a C or a Q or a E, lowercase e. So P for peer. I have a lot of fun with P's because I just have fun with them. And again, these are all running amok. A P is like a B without the extra loop. So if you make a B like this, just leave off the extra bit. If you make a B like that, leave off the extra bit. But if you make your P, I tend to have fun deciding. I was making a bunch of treble clefs once for a project, and I really loved that vertical line. And how can I turn that into a part of a letter? And it was really fun. Another thing I like to do is to take, let's say, a black hand, trying to make this look like a German P. Okay, if I were to have this black letter P and I was using this as my basis for how I was going to do a script P, oops. Does that work? Maybe not. But it's fun to try. PQ. P's and Q's. The Q that we were taught in school looked like that. Lame. So you can make the Q the same way you make an O. Start with that and then pick up the pen and then add your tail. Or you can do that. The thing is, an O has the thick line on this side and a Q has it on the other side. So it may look kind of weird, but maybe not. There's not that many letters. Most of the letters that are rounded like this, the C has the thing on that side. Anyway, I guess, never mind what I was going to say. So Q, back to Q. Can I make a Q like this? No, I can't make a Q like that. How do I make my Qs? Sometimes I don't put a loop there. Anyway, Qs are fun, but the most important part of the Q for me, or the fun part, is the tail. And to make it be, I mean, that's clearly a Q, but that's about as ugly as a Q you can make. Now see, these are looking weird. I think I prefer a Q that I think is all one stroke. So you make your O shape, and then you add the tail shape. Okay, R. Now an R was like a P, except it has a tail. So again, the P that I was just making, you can make an R like that, or you can make an R like that. You can make an R like that. You can also have all of the downstrokes. And any of these things that do this, whether it be a B or an R, you can make that be a loop if you want. I think I prefer my loops to actually loop around the thing there. I don't like them to be by themselves, like over like that. It's like the cowboy didn't lasso the calf. You know, he missed. But there's fun ways to make them, you know, with sharp lines and curved lines, and mix them all together. Again, this would not be thick up here. Thick, up, thick. R. Okay, let's go to S. S's are fun because you have a couple of different ways to make them. You can, you know, make them look like a printed S with pubes. A printed S with pubes could be a cursive S. You can make it in the capital I way, kind of, where you I guess the capital I way is this way, you know, with this rocking chair bottom, which I don't like. You can do them like Melissa does, where you have their big gut walking down the street like that. I like Melissa's S's. They need a monocle and a top hat and a walking stick, though, as they're walking down the street to the bank, walking down the street to foreclose on the widow and her 10 children, the violin in the background playing. But there's also other ways to sort of, the Germanic S, or a black letter S, which looks kind of like this, and they often will throw a line up there like that to make it almost look like an 8. There can be a way where you can kind of do that here. Badly. Again, just to fill it up, but it might end up looking like a dollar sign. So you don't want that. I've made S's look like that before. Rob Morrison makes an S look like that sometimes. Schaefer. You'll have this loop coming into the S. But see, this looks like an unfinished L to me. It doesn't look like an S as much as I like it to look like an S. Okay, let's go to ST. T's I don't generally like. Again, because the defining part of a T, like an L, is this horizontal line. So if I was paying attention to these two parts, I would make those two parts kind of identical. So if I've made my L look like that, I would feel somewhat obligated to make my T have this long thing too. So now whether you cross your T's or add the, I think most people would start their T like this with the downstroke and then they cross the top of it. But some people do it the other way around. Wesky Squirrel has a way of making a T where he does this loop here and he makes his F's that same way, I think, which is kind of nice, an interesting way to do it. I do like the one stroke T. And that works fine for me. As well. Okay. Can I make there's another way to do a T where you do this kind of a thing, where you have it standing on two distinct legs, and the legs can be curved and straight, or I don't think you can really do them both curved. I think it would look dumb, but maybe not. Okay, T, U, V, W, X, we're almost done. U. Okay, the U, you can have a loop or a point. This really has to stop. This can't, well, sometimes it can go down, I guess. You can make a Y, United States. I guess you could have that come down like that. You don't want it to be at all confused with a Y though. So you really do have to pull this way. You don't want to have this ever be a point because it'll be confused with a V or an N. If you pull that down, that's gonna look like an N. So again, that's a V. That's not a U. That's an abomination. So you have to be careful. UV. So the V, again, for some reason I really like doing this kind of a thing where I start off with a big horizontal line and then fly up with this one. What I don't like is this kind of thing. I think I don't like it. Now other people might, but I'm not fond of that. Sometimes you can do that sort of imitating a serif on the top. Again, you don't want it to look like a Z, though. That might look like a Z to someone if this is straight. V, what's next? W. So W is kind of like a V. You want these to be points. You don't want them to be...
Here, I have to bring my car to get an oil change.
Okay. See you later. So you can have them be loops on the bottom. You can't have them be all loops because that's an abomination. But if you make these be loops, see, that's weird. The saggy boob W. I like points generally on a W. Now, can this go this way? You can do something like that. Oh, I just remembered another D. You can do a D like that, where you do that little doober on the top. See, I'm remembering other ways to do things. WX. X's are fucked. I'm just telling you that right now. X. Here's an X. It's just, there's this issue of having two fat lines crossing each other, which you don't want to do. But if you're writing with a pen, it's going to happen because these are both downstrokes and they both can make a fat line. So my advice would be to just have one of them be fat. Or do X's like this. Which again, they're both fat. They're both, but anyway, X's are screwy. You can play around with which, is it going to look like that? Is it going to look like that? Is it going to look like that? You can play with the length of the two strokes. Some people make X's with one stroke where they go like that, which I think is not pleasant. But when you're writing Xanadu or xylophone, you'll understand what it is. Okay, the Z. Okay, cursive Z, how they got that is beyond my comprehension. Where did that come from? But it came from somewhere. So you can use it if you want to. It's perfectly fine to use that Z. Oh, I haven't done Y. Did I do Y? X, Y, Z. Sorry. Let's go back to, move that down here. Got Y. Y. Okay. Decide which line you want thick, which lines you want thick. And again, you can play with this being a loop or a point. You can have the Y do this kind of thing, or you can have the Y cross it like that. So there's some play that you have, with this thing, with that part of the Y, there's play. This part of the Y has to I think, be relatively, I guess you could have a straight line going into it. But if you have a loop up here like this, then it turns into a G. So you want to avoid that. Okay, back to our Z. So again, we don't want it to look like a Y. I sometimes like doing you know, sort of take a regular printed Z and just having both of these things be points, but having fun with the horizontal and vertical lines. So let's go back to Z here. So we go 1, 2. We can also do that kind of a Z. We can do that kind of a Z. Sometimes you make a loop there. I think if you make a loop on both sides, that ends up looking too much like an L. So, but maybe a loop just on the bottom one will work. And again, you might want to emphasize the bottom one more than another. Are you here? Hold on. Just a minute. I will. Just a minute. I have to get out of my chair. I'm back. Sorry. I don't know if anyone is still here. I had to fix a gate in the rain. We have a gate at the driveway that was put up along with the fence around the house to keep the deer from eating all of the trees and flowers that my dad and mom planted. And the gate was having some problems, which we figured out what the problem was and fixed it. And for some reason now it is not working. And it's been raining, so I'm wondering whether somehow the wiring we did shorted out somehow. So anyway, so again, do I have any can I make any generalizations of what I've done? I think the only generalization I can make is to be consistent in your design. I love looking at people's personal handwriting, and there was at one point that's how people made an M sometimes in Mr. and Mrs. And when I saw that, I really liked it. 2, 3 lines and a dash. But they weren't consistent. That's not how they made an N. So to me, this might look nice as an M, but if you're going to use that for an M, then that has to be a W and that has to be an N. And there's no way about it. That's a rule you have to carry through. But it was really fun anyway. So if you're doing something fun with a B, whatever this fun thing is, let's say you make your B like this, a Harpo Marx B. That's how you make a P. And you make a D like this, the 7-toed sloth footprint. So I guess in building a typeface for your script to be to follow a rule you've decided upon, try to find the letters that are similar to it and follow that. And every once in a while there'll be a letter that doesn't really follow any rules, like an S, that you can do whatever you want with. A Q, kind of, you can, letters that you don't use a lot, I think you can play around with it without having to be consistent. But what do I know? Bob, are you still here, Bob Anderson? This video was dedicated to my friend Bob Anderson. I don't know if he's even here to accept that. Speaking of accepting dedications, Queen Victoria demanded that Lewis Carroll dedicate. She liked Alice in Wonderland so much. Oh, hi, Cedar. Lewis Carroll, she liked Alice in Wonderland so much that she said to Lewis Carroll, "We would like it very much if you would dedicate your next book to us." And Lewis Carroll said, "Well, yes, Your Majesty, I will do that." But his next book was some very dry, esoteric mathematics text. So, too bad. That's what you get, Your Majesty, for making demands. So, Bob Anderson, you need to lie down. Why do you need to lie down? Is my dedication. Let me show you some other things I can do with my iPad. Cedar, or anyone else who's watching, you'd switch this over. I use this. App called Sketch Club, and it allows you to create brushes. And the brushes that I create, I'll just show you how it works right now. Let me just make this be, let me do this. I'm gonna color fill white. I'm just gonna do it with white. So I'm gonna make a brush for this app using a B and an A for your initials. And I'm going to make, that's part of the B, that's part of the A. This is a cuneiform A and a B, I guess, huh? That's going to be an A, and the B, how am I going to make the B? Oh, let's just, I'm going to tart this up a little bit, just because I know what I'm planning on doing with this. So I'm going to just make these kind of, so there's BA. Okay, so I'm going to make a brush out of this. Now I'm going to tart it up a little bit more, just because I can. Make a couple more little dubers like this. Okay. So now what I do is take my select tool and I select it, and I go up here to brush and I add a brush. Add, create from selection, and now I go up here to flow. I want it to flow all the way. I want the spacing to be like that. I want it to follow. I want this to be randomized. I want this to be pressure to the full. Okay, good. Done. Now let's go to this. So again, if I were to so what I'm doing, what happens is that little shape is repeated. and it's randomized so that color fill black. So it becomes this really fun little brush to play with. And it's your initials, the design just over, repeated. And I can move it so the spacing is closer together. Or I can pull them so they're further apart. But sometimes for certain things like this, I may make them scatter, and I can make them flip, and I can make them rotate. There's rotation. Okay, and then they become a little bit more just like a sort of screwed up brush. And it's kind of fun to calligraph with things like this. I'll show you one that works better than the one I just made. This one looks like a K. This looks like leaves. So if I'm making a map, for example, and I'm looking down at a tree, yeah, that was easy. And I can add some white. So when I make maps, I like doing, here's just well, look at the design. It's just an S shape, but when they're repeated next to each other, then they can become a really nice moire pattern. But I sometimes, let's see if I can find another one here that I've made that are here. This is one that I made that I've jumbled. So it's like a fuzzy, it's like the letters were made of yarn and the cat clawed at it. I have this thing pressure set to go, yeah, that works better if but anyway, the iPad Pro and using the Apple Pencil and this app and most apps that are based on using the Apple Pencil is you can press down. The more you press down, the thicker a line becomes. This app, though, you don't need to have the iPad Pro to have this work with your app. This app can also have the thick and thin lines happen by the speed of your finger as you run it along. But this one is working for that. Okay, working with this. BA, clear, clear. So Cedar, are you at work or are you at home? Did I forget to take my drugs? I did forget to take my drugs. Oh, okay. Well, I've been having fun with more of my John Singer Sargent um, watercolor that I keep on doing over and over and over again, but I'm thinking I may try not copying another one, but maybe doing something around here using all of the colors, or maybe just two colors. Maybe I should go back to just doing with two. But it's so much fun just using the pen and ink wash to dissolve the ink. Oh, I did all that without drugs. I have a question, Cedar. The picture you just posted on Instagram, was that another old one or a new? Because I liked it. Let me show you the lamps. Our house has an interesting collection of shit. Fuck me. Like, get out of here. Oh, nice. I like that. But we have lamps in this house that are the base of which, this is a Russian samovar. Come on. Oh, fuck. Just change it. Camera. There. This is a Russian samovar that was turned into a lamp base. So this is what I draw. Here's the TV. And I sit usually here, wherever the chair is, right there. And I'm looking at the TV, and rather than watching the TV, I'm over here drawing that thing. Or that lamp over there. Or this lamp over here. I just love looking at this whole pile of shit because it's an instant still life. Yes, we do have an oriental carpet on our dining room table. That's our tablecloth, just in case. In here, there's another samovar lamp in the corner. But there's other areas I could conceivably find to paint, including going outside and painting in the rain. I also like sort of this corner, with the light here and then the sparkly bits of light happening over there. Yeah, I really like doing that too, Cedar. Where's, go back to my front camera. There's a game I used to play as a kid and I play as an adult, called challenge drawings. And you take a scribble or a bunch of little scribbles on a page and you turn them into a drawing. And there was a time when I was doing that using the app I like. Every morning I would give myself a challenge drawing, and then I would draw sometimes 20 or 30 drawings based on that one starting point. And I really had fun doing it and made hundreds of them. Maybe not hundreds. I made maybe 60 starting doodles. And then for each starting doodle, I might have made 5 or 10 or 20 per doodle. And I think I have them on my Flickr page. And then I coming up with captions for them and making little cartoons. And some of them, I think, if I do say so myself, I thought I was pretty clever. If I do say so myself, I think I was clever. But it was all starting with these little scribbles, and seeing what that scribble could turn into. And I love the scribbles turning into faces. So you like drawing faces and figures. I tend to not so much, though sometimes I do. And I would like to do more of them. So I think maybe sometime, Cedar, when you and I want to do a side-by-side thing, again, that would be fun. And I'm going to do an instructional YouTube video on how to make an iPhone holder upper out of 2 hangers and some tape. And I will do that. Yeah, some might have been wedding invitations. The ones that I'm thinking about, the challenge drawings that I really, really like to do, were done. I think they're on my Flickr page. If you go to my Flickr page, and there's a folder called challenge drawings. There's also a YouTube video that I have up showing the challenge drawings too. So you might enjoy that. Good morning, Ms. Marilyn. So that would be fun, actually, to give each other challenge drawings. Cedar, I'll send you a image which you have to finish, and then you do the same with me. I think that would be a fun. Other people can do this too. I think you don't have to be, quote, an artist to do these. I would do this quite often at a bar when I used to drink, and I would go to essentially one restaurant almost every night, and I knew a lot of the regulars there, and there was one couple that loved this game, and the woman especially, she just beamed playing it, and I'd have scraps of paper, about the size of a index card, quarter sheet of paper, and we would give each other challenge drawings, and her drawings were clumsy and sort of poorly composed, or whatever an artist would say, but her stories that she came up with to go along with the drawings were just amazing. And it's like, what drugs was she on? I want whatever she's having. Give me a double, because she was seeing all of these things. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an exquisite corpse, but it's more you, the artist that's finishing it. You're in charge of the whole piece of paper, not just a third of it or a quarter of it. It's more, you're the author, I think, where the other one is more each contributor takes a third or a half. This is more up to you. It's more deliberate, I guess. The other thing is fun, but that's more accidental, which can be fun too. But I prefer the ones that are more deliberate, I guess. Yeah, the lead-in lines are sometimes very geometric. I have the very first one I ever did, I have in this house. My parents turned it into a plate, a dish, but the teacher in second grade gave everyone in class a piece of manila paper, and she drew on my piece of paper a triangle and a line and a squiggle and maybe a square. And I can show you exactly what it looked like if you want to see. It'll take me 2 minutes to get to it. You have 2 minutes to wait. Does anyone have 2 minutes to wait? Cedar, do you have 2 minutes? I could have found it by now, I suppose. Okay, let's see it. Sure, let's see it. I'll show you another lamp base we have. Well, here's a bronze rock, and there's the ocean is crashing up on the, well, of course there's no, the ocean is crashing up here, and here's a dragon, sea monster crawling up. Anyway, let me get it. You have 2 minutes. You want to see it? Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, first of all, I have to show you what I looked like when I was a kid. A little baby. Look at me, Piers Scott. Okay, can I make this work? 4 pounds, 5 ounces. Look at that. Look at that little butt. I'm sucking my thumb, I think. Piers Scott. Okay. This is the plate they made. So here's the first challenge drawing I did in second grade. So I'm trying to see if I can discern. I think there's a square here. There might have been, that triangle might have been the triangle, and that square. There was probably a curve here somewhere. It's really hard to tell because of the way this was. I mean, if I had the actual piece of paper, I could probably figure it out. But I don't have the actual piece of paper. But I made a little boat. That's what this is. It's a little boat. Isn't that cute? On a scale of 1 to 10, which is cuter? Is that cuter or is that cute? Cute, cute. Looks like I'm assuming the position. God, I'm such a right into the gutter. You like the plate. I don't know whether that's my signature. It seems a little too neat for me. It could have been me, but it might have been, it could have been the second grade teacher. It's hard for me to tell. They're both cute. Oh, thank you. But anyway, the challenge drawings are fun, and I've been doing it ever since. That was the very first one I did, and I still do them, and they're quite fun. Well, I think on this note, it's 10:45, and I think I need to move over to work on this job for Harvard. I think. So I have to remember where I put the parts of it. But it'll come to me. So Cedar, maybe tomorrow we can do a side-by-side thing. I'm going to make a video of how to make a really good stand for using hangers and a piece of tape and a piece of cardboard to use for your iPhone holder upper. So you can have it above your desk looking straight down, and also short enough that you can see what you're doing, or see what I'm doing and see that you're still in the picture. So we'll do that right now in a few minutes. So see you all later.